I recently participated in Ready Set Jam, which is an invitation-only game jam organised by Vimlark. It's a competition for YouTube game devs, split into multiple series and rounds. I was part of the second series, along with Helper Wesley, Yarnick and Y11. In the first round, our theme was to create an interpretation of the classic game of Asteroids, with a twist of Cant Stop Moving. We had 48 non-consecutive hours over 2 weeks to complete it. I started thinking about familiarising myself with the classic Asteroids game. The objective was to get the highest score by trying to survive the onslaught of asteroids and attacks from alien ships. Some of the base mechanics include: player shoots. Player ship can turn when stationary. The game has screen wrap. Asteroids have 3 sizes and break down to smaller ones when shot and destroyed. And there's hyperspace teleport. I was keen to try and be faithful to as many of these original mechanics as possible, but decided to leave out hyperspace teleport as it brings too much randomness to the game and may frustrate the player if they get killed in unfair situations, and might not be suitable for a modern version of the game. After some pondering on how I could incorporate the twist of Can't Stop Moving, the idea I decided to go with was having something follow you and bump into you if you stop moving. I would then expand on this idea by including missions, where the player needs to collect cargo and deliver it to different space stations around the level. I also wanted to give the player a reason for destroying the asteroids, with the cargo following as the main challenge of the game. So the objective became collect cargo, destroy asteroids to collect orbs that powered up the cargo, and then deliver the cargo to another station whilst avoiding bumping into other objects. I started by getting a simple prototype working with placeholder art that I grabbed from opengameart.com. I attempted to write my own movement code, but quickly decided it would be better to utilise GameMaker's inbuilt physics engine. This would allow the game to have really interesting interactions between the player ship and objects that would have taken ages to code from scratch. I then added logic for screen wrap and shooting. It was at this point in the project, around 4 hours in, that I wanted to bring my own art to the game. I decided to make models in Blender and render them out to import into GameMaker. The asteroid is made by adding in a sphere and using the mesh randomize function to give it a natural looking shape, and then give it a toon shading to give it a cartoony look. I rendered out individual frames for 360 degrees of rotation to give it a spinning animation, with the light coming from a constant direction. The ship was also modelled in Blender, and as it's a much smaller object and has more detail than asteroids, I figured I could get away with not having directional light in the sprite. Next was adding a bit of juice, such as hit flash, particles and screen shake. Around this time, with great regret, I decided to cut the screen wrapping from the game, as I didn't think I could get it to work well with the screen scrolling and the cargo following and delivering mechanic. For background art that will be used as part of the tile set, I decided to use Asteroids as opposed to Blender. The reason is that I needed pixel perfect precision to make seamless tiles that would be a lot harder to achieve in Blender. I stuck to the same colours in the palette and tried to draw in a style that would complement the toon rendering models. To give the game a bit of depth, I gave the game object shadows that can be seen whilst flying over the stations. The shadows are actually the same dark purple colour as the background, and so they blend in and can't be seen, giving the illusion that they only appear over the stations. Next was modelling the cargo object using the same rotating rendering technique that I used for the asteroids. And then on to programming the logic for following the ship, which I had a bunch of fun playing around with. I was now about 20 hours in, and one thing I noticed while playing is the movement felt quite restricted and it often felt slow to get out of the way of flying asteroids. So I wanted to implement a sharp drift maneuver for getting out of the way of objects without necessarily turning the angle of the ship too much. I think this extra movement mechanic adds extra depth and could make the game a better candidate for speedrunning. Next was adding some UI and improving the artwork for the space stations. The original game had alien ships, so I wanted to add them to my game to add a bit of variety. To save time, I modelled the enemy ship from the main player ship with adjustments here and there. I also wanted the enemy ship to be able to shoot from different angles, so I gave it a separate sprite for the gun that could spin around and point towards the player. For reasons, the design of the ship's gun went through a few iterations. For the title screen, I went back into my 3D models to render larger sprites at the front perspective and gave them a bit of a wobble effect to give the screen a bit of life. I was keen to try and get a high score table that 80s arcade games used to have, but didn't think I would have enough time, so I simplified it by having simple calls to a server to get the best and average time for all playthroughs, and that will be shown to the player after they completed the game. One of the last things was coming up with the name and adding that to the title screen. I was pretty happy with the final game. I felt that it fit the theme of Asteroids well, and I implemented the twist of Can't Stop Moving in a reasonable way. Though after playing the other games, I probably played it quite safe, as there was some really creative and interesting interpretations of the Asteroids mechanic. I caught up on Vimlark's stream where he played the game and had some really nice things to say about it.
Oh, ooh, that's juicy and satisfying. That's a cool idea. Okay, so now we get the air for deliver. Okay, cool. I'm getting it. I do appreciate that once they're the little ones, it's only one shot to break them. I could see someone actually making those take still 2 or 3 shots.
And some bits of feedback that I could use to improve the game.
The drifting's really weird. I do think the shooting sound effect is a little loud.
Around a week after submission, we received the judges' feedback along with the result of the first round. I was super thrilled to find out my game was rated first in the group. This meant that I could choose the theme for the scope creep round. The choices were teleport, freeze, and bigger is better. I didn't go with teleport for reasons I didn't include it in the first place, and I didn't think freeze would integrate well into my game. I decided to go with bigger is better, and I'll go on to talk more about this in my round 2 video. I have left a link to the game if you wanted to try it out for yourself in the description of this video. If you are interested in my content, please like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, hope you'll swing by again.